Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Andrea Garcia. I graduated from Northeastern's College of Social Sciences and Humanities in 2019, and I'm the co-chair of Northeastern's Young Global Leaders. On behalf of Northeastern University's Young Global Leaders and the Damore School of Business, I want to welcome the first Northeastern African Business Conference. This conference is part of Northeastern's Africa Global Initiative, which aims to strengthen our university's ties within the continent. It's supported by the Young Global Leaders, and it's now my honor to introduce the president of Northeastern University, President Joseph E. Aoun. President?
Good day. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the first annual Africa Business Conference at Northeastern University. I would like to thank all of today's organizers and presenters. Let me start by thanking Trustee Subodh Chanrai. Your support, Subodh, made this initiative a reality. Our young global leaders also contributed substantially to this conference. I also would like to thank our host, the Africa Global Initiative, chaired by Dean Hazel Siv, and the Damore McKim School of Business, and especially the head of the Center for Emerging Market Studies, Ravi Ramamurthy. Our goal today is to chart a pathway of engagement with Africa. Africa is a continent of growth and innovation. It is home to many of Northeastern's students, faculty, and leaders. We are excited to build mutually empowering relationships with our African partners. At Northeastern, we understand that engagement is a two-way street. Professor Ramamurthy reminds us of this fact with his pioneering work on reverse innovation. Reverse innovation happens when people develop solutions that work in the context of their communities. It happens all over the world. That is why we need dialogues like this one. We have real impact when we learn from each other. Today's conference is an important step forward, building deeper relationships and an understanding. Thank you all for your participation in today's program. What you are doing here represents Northeastern's true global spirit. I look forward to hearing the great exchange of ideas. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, President Aoun. In a minute, I will be introducing you to Professor Ravi Ramamurthy, who heads the Center for Emerging Markets at the Damore McKim School of Business. But first, I want to call your attention to a few features in this Zoom session. You are welcome to introduce yourself by giving your name and your city or country of residence in the side chat bar. Questions to the panelists should be asked in the Q&A box. Ravi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andrea. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be. We have a very interesting program planned for this morning, and let me just give you a quick overview of what lies ahead. As you heard from President Aoun, Africa has enormous potential for growth in the coming years. If you look at Africa's share of world GDP, it's about 1/3 of its share of world population. And if you look at its share of world trade, it's about 1/5 of its share of the world population. So there is ample room for Africa to grow, lots of headroom for further growth in the future. Even now, though, Africa is a $2 trillion economy with the possibilities of growing into a $5 trillion economy. It has a very young population. One of the statistics that really hits you is when you see that the average age of the continent of 1 billion people is 18 years. And just for comparison, India is considered a young country. The average age there is 28 years. And in China, of course, I believe it is 38 years. And in the US, it is 35 years. So if you look at the age of the population, that alone is a major reason for all companies everywhere in the world to be thinking about what they might do in Africa. What we've planned today is 3 sessions, and they are going to be vary from being focusing at a very macro level to going down to a more micro level at the level of a company, and then turning back again to look at some issues at a macro level. So our first panel is going to look at the business relationships between the US and Africa. Our second session will drill down deeper to look at one company that is making a real difference in Africa to the lives of average Kenyans, and that is a company called Safaricom. And then we're going to step back again and take a more macro view and look at some of the political issues between the US and Africa. So without further ado, let's get started with our first panel. It's a pleasure to welcome and introduce Floreselle Lyser, who is the third president and CEO of the Corporate Council on Africa. She's the first woman to head up the Corporate Council on Africa since its founding in 1993. Ms. Lyser joined the Corporate Council on Africa after serving for a number of years in the office of the US Trade Rep, where she was the assistant USTR, focused on sub-Saharan Africa, and was involved in negotiating trade and investment policies with 49 countries in the region. She also oversaw the implementation of the very important Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, which has provided opportunities for African companies to export duty-free into the US. She is currently a member of the advisory board of the Millennial Challenge Corporation, the Export-Import Bank, and is a board member of the Women in International Trade. She holds an MA, a Master's in International Economics from Johns Hopkins University, and a Bachelor's in International Relations and Political Science from Dickinson College. So it's a pleasure to welcome Ms. Lyser. And before we get started, let me introduce the moderator for the session, Mr. Ayo Oyebanjo, who holds a bachelor's degree from our own Northeastern School of Business Administration, the Damore McKim School of Business. After graduating from the Damore McKim School of Business in 2013, Ayo has been working in the Central Bank of Nigeria since 2014. He is a recipient of his alma mater's honor, which is to be serving as a member of the Young Global Leaders since its inception in 2013. So I'm going to turn it over now to Ayo and Florie Liser.
Well, thank you very much for the kind introduction. As Professor Ramamurthy mentioned, I'm Florie Liser, President and CEO of the Corporate Council on Africa, the leading US business association focused exclusively on promoting greater US-Africa trade, investment, and business partnerships. Our member companies, both US and African, multinationals, as well as SMEs, represent a diverse pool of industries active in Africa's most promising sectors, including agribusiness, energy, finance, health, ICT, infrastructure, and security. So I guess people would ask why Africa matters. Well, at CCA, we believe in the promise and great potential of US-Africa business relations. Africa is not monolithic. Its countries represent a diversity of history, culture, people, and language. While Africa is complex, its strategic and economic relevance to the United States, however, is clear. By the year 2025, more than half the population of Africa will be under age 25. By 2050, a quarter of the world's population will be African, and Nigeria will surpass the United States as the third most populous country in the world. In that same year, 2 in every 5 children will be born in Africa. And by 2100, the year 2100, 13 of the world's 20 biggest urban areas will be in Africa. The continent is already one of the fastest growing consumer markets in the world with 1.7 billion people, and its growing middle class and large youth population represent significant export opportunities and partnership opportunities for US businesses and for US goods and services. A productive youth population in Africa not only expands US market opportunities, but also reduces the conditions that foster global insecurity. Economic development, as you know, is essential to revitalize markets, encourage investment, private sector investment, and address secondary social, and economic impacts caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Africa is producing much of the world's next generation of entrepreneurs, innovators, and technology experts who aspire to create jobs, fix inequities, and address political, social, and economic challenges across the continent and the world. US companies are their natural commercial partners, in my opinion, and their service providers in achieving much needed economic diversification in Africa. I'd like to say a little bit now about the African Continental Free Trade Area, what we call Afcfta. Africa is poised to become one of the world's most important economic regions. When the 54-country African Continental Free Trade Area is fully implemented, it will comprise the 5th largest economic bloc in the world, representing a huge source of jobs, consumers, innovation, and power to shape the global economy. The Afcfta is a game changer for Africa's own economic integration and regional trade, as well as pulling African products and services into global value chains and boosting trade-related investment. It will also require that African governments improve their business climates, promote good governance, support private sector-led growth that creates jobs, and invest in their businesses, especially SME, youth, and women-owned enterprises. It will be imperative for African governments to work more closely together, improving energy and transportation infrastructure across borders, addressing climate change and food security, and digitizing trade are other areas ripe for private sector involvement that will be vital to maximizing the continent's cohesion and success under the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. In a speech on US-Africa policy in Nigeria last November, US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken welcomed the African Continental Free Trade Area because, he said, we want to see Africa's economic power in the world grow. More consumers should gain access to African goods and services. More jobs must be created for Africa's young people, the global workforce of the future, end quote. I share Secretary Blinken's enthusiasm for the Afcfta. In addition, I believe in the importance of Africa not only increasing intra-African trade, currently at only around 15%, but also enhancing Africa's benefits from and role in the global trading system. Value addition and export diversification is needed to increase Africa's share of world trade, only at about 3% today, and to integrate African suppliers into regional and global value chains and support industrialization in Africa and job creation there as well. And I think that increasing US-Africa trade can play an important role in that. Now, let me speak a little bit about AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. Since 2000, AGOA has provided eligible countries in Africa duty-free access to American markets for thousands of products. AGOA's aim has been to increase both trade and foster partnerships between US and African companies, and to encourage US companies to invest in manufacturing and value addition in Africa. CCA supports the annual AGOA Private Sector Forum, which has always provided a great opportunity to touch base not only with the African governments, but with companies that are on the ground to get a better sense of what is working and what could be changed for the better. AGOA in its current form is set to expire in 2025, just 3 years away, and Congress is beginning to think through what approaches would make the most sense for the future. Prosper Africa is another initiative of the United States that I'd like to touch on. CCA has worked closely with the US government to support our latest major trade initiative on the continent, which is called Prosper Africa. Announced in December 2018, Prosper Africa brings together 17 US government agencies to expand two-way trade and investment between the United States and Africa. Prosper Africa has been quick off the mark to incorporate new tools from the Development Finance Corporation, which used to be OPIC, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation. And it's also pulled in the Export-Import Bank of the United States, Exim Bank, as well as the Millennium Challenge Corporation, MCC. In 2020, the US government also set up deal teams, formalizing and expanding long-standing support that many US embassies in Africa have provided for companies coming to Africa and looking to invest in African business. We are also working with a number of individual countries in Africa to help shine the light on them, especially those that are doing what we would all like to see them do, supporting their people, reducing poverty, and increasing democratic engagement. A recent example of CCA's support for Prosper Africa was a US-Zambia Business and Investment Forum we organized just this past December. One of the good news stories about democracy in Africa that Secretary Blinken mentioned in his speech was about Zambia, where the opposition party won elections in August, something few believe would be allowed to happen. Our virtual forum served as a platform to explore and engage directly with the governments of Zambia and the United States, as well as the private sector, on opportunities for partnerships in key sectors. The event featured the president of Zambia, as well as senior officials from the US and Zambia, and key private sector investors in that country. This was one of our final events in a very busy and productive year for CCA, highlighted by our 2021 US Africa Business Summit, which was held virtually because of the pandemic. We also held several programs in September on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, UNGA, including hosting the presidents of Tanzania, the only woman, female president on the continent, President Samia. And we also featured the president of Namibia, president of Kenya, and the president of the African Development Bank, as well as 4 Nigerian state governors. Let me move forward and share with you a little bit about a newer initiative that's looking to promote investment in the key sector of infrastructure in Africa. This is B3W, as we call it, the Build Back Better World. In June 2021, President Biden and G7 partners agreed to launch the bold new global infrastructure initiative, B3W, a values-driven, high-standard, and transparent infrastructure partnership led by major democracies to help narrow the $14 trillion infrastructure gap that needs to be met in the developing world. This has been exacerbated no less by the pandemic, what's happened to infrastructure and supply chains in Africa and all around the world, as we all know. Through B3W, the G7 and other like-minded partners will coordinate in mobilizing private sector capital in 4 areas of focus: climate, health and health security, digital technology, and last but not least, gender equity and equality, each of which will have catalytic investments from our respective development finance institutions. Let me turn to a couple of these focus areas, health and digital technology, and expand on the private sector role in Africa. Health, I feel, is really, really critical. I think we all know that now better than ever because of COVID. I feel that collaboration between governments and the private sector is critical to meeting the unprecedented challenges caused by the pandemic while progressing on economic development issues. Ensuring more equitable vaccine access is a key first step that offers businesses in sectors ranging from health to ICT a unique opportunity to work together to meet Africa's public health needs. Both companies and governments have had to scramble over the last year to deal with unexpected and profound shocks to supply chains. There is now a great opportunity in 2022 and beyond for companies and governments to develop a more resilient, secure set of supply chains and expand their collaboration to create new markets. I also think this is a great time to pull African countries into those supply chains so that Africa can produce more of the products that are needed and that we're not all dependent on just one region or one country of the world to supply what we need. CCA hopes that through our health initiative, we call it the U.S. Africa Health Security and Resilience Initiative, we hope to bring both U.S. and African public and private stakeholders together to discuss ways to collaborate on not only fighting COVID, but also building stronger African health systems for the future. Our initiative is a good example of the potential for collaboration to deliver real results on the ground in Africa. It is also a great time for companies, members of CCA like Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and others, non-governmental organizations and African governments to build on the notable achievements that have been made in several areas, including malaria and reproductive health, fighting HIV/AIDS, as well as expanding collaboration on critical issues like non-communicable diseases in Africa, like diabetes, and to also improve capacity building in the health sector in Africa, which is desperately needed. Now, in terms of digital technologies, our members are very active in working with small businesses and startups in Africa. For example, last October, Google, which is a member of CCA, announced its plans to invest $1 billion in Africa over the next 5 years to ensure access to fast and cheaper internet and to back startups to support the continent's digital transformation. FinTech, which we all know stands for financial tech, has made a big impact in African countries, especially in Nigeria and Kenya, in areas such as electronic payments, cryptocurrency, and digital banking. One of our members, Flutterwave, a Nigerian and American-based company, is very active in the electronics payment sector on the continent. And so as the world tackles climate change, we're seeing that green tech will also become increasingly important, encompassing a range of products from electric vehicles to solar panels. So yes, there are some challenges in Africa. We know that there still remains some corruption in some countries, but corruption is not peculiar to the continent of Africa. We know that democracy is also under pressure across the continent, with many Africans living under at least partially authoritarian governments. And unfortunately, military coups overthrew civilian governments in Chad, Mali, Guinea, and Sudan in 2021, and in Burkina Faso just last month. Instability and insecurity affect a number of African countries, including Ethiopia, Nigeria, Somalia, Mozambique, Cameroon, Mali, and Niger. And these threats posed by armed conflict and crime impede economic growth and undermine development. But let me just say, to counter the challenges, I want to also make sure that we know about the good news stories about Africa, the things that are happening there that are positive, and that we're not just looking at the bad news, which we see on the news, but we recognize that all across the continent, there is progress that's being made, democracy that's being made, excellent leaders of Africa, and companies and businesses all across Africa that are doing great things and promoting economic development on the continent. Let me just speak to China. Lots of people talk about China in Africa. I think we know that China is the largest investor in Africa and is active in almost all the countries on the continent, especially in infrastructure projects. But what a lot of people don't know is that the US, through its Millennium Challenge Corporation, MCC, has also invested in Africa in the infrastructure sector, more than $11 billion across the continent. And I have personally had the pleasure of seeing a number of those projects: roads, ports, energy facilities. I've seen a lot of them, and we are behind also building Africa's infrastructure And I would be remiss if I just talked about what China's doing and didn't mention what the United States is doing as well. And beyond government, I also feel that US business engagement in Africa can be more beneficial to local populations, a path that is somewhat different than the one that China sets. Many have noted that those projects have low environmental standards, labor issues at times, and also saddle African nations with significant debt. As Secretary Blinken said in his speech in Nigeria in November, our approach will be sustainable, it will be transparent, it will be values driven. We want to create local jobs and benefit local communities. We support anti-corruption and transparency measures so leaders and citizens in Africa can evaluate whether deals made on their behalf really are worth it. And we want to protect workers and the environment. So looking ahead, I just want to end by talking for just a moment about our hopes for 2022 and beyond. CCA has high hopes for the continent of Africa, for the governments, for the people, and for US engagement with our African partners through the private sector and through US government. While Afcfta implementation and phase 2 negotiations proceed on the African side, we also anticipate that the Biden administration will set a path for a stronger, re-energized US-Africa relationship, advancing the Prosper Africa Build Together campaign and B3W projects in Africa, and launching a Digital Africa initiative. We also hope the USG will announce a new economic partnership framework that supports Afcfta implementation, builds on AGOA, and moves ahead on the US-Kenya FTA or other trade negotiations. The recent announcement by USTR that it will be going back to the table with the Kenyans perhaps signals a transition to resuming full FTA talks, hopefully in the future. And we're excited that the year will be topped off with a much welcome US-Africa Leaders Summit. CCA looks forward to actively supporting the US-Africa economic agenda in the new year, highlighted by hosting our own signature US-Africa Business Summit in Morocco in July. And I just want to say again, thanks so much to Northeastern University for inviting me to be a part of this first Africa conference. And I look forward to answering any questions and to hearing what all the other panelists have to say. Thank you so much.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for those insightful and very thorough remarks, Florie. It's an honor to have you on this very first African Business Conference. Good morning and good day, good evening, depending on where you're calling in from. My name is Aya once again. I'm gonna be leading the Q&A. So I would like to start with a question regarding trade and self-reliance. So for many African countries, which are import dependent, like Nigeria, where I'm calling from, what type of policies and recommendations, other recommendations would you give in order for them to be more self-reliant and supply more local/regional demand, as well as diversify the products produced and traded regionally in addition to globally?
Well, thank you, Ayo. I think that's a great question, and one that many of us working in Africa over the years have asked. I think the key is to adding value to Africa's products. I think many of you know that Africa is at the bottom of the supply chain for almost every product category. They export the cocoa beans and import the cocoa products and the chocolate. They export the cotton and import textiles and apparel. They export raw copper and import copper piping. We could go on and on and on. And part of the reason why Africa is not a bigger player in the global economy and global trading, you know, as I said earlier, they account for only 3% of all world trade, which is hard to believe when you look at all of the products that Africa has. So they have to actually invest on their own and attract investment into those supply chains so that they are processing and manufacturing value-added products on the continent, and thereby being able to supply the needs of their own local economies, to ship those products across the continent so that Nigeria is shipping to Ghana, and Ghana is shipping to Liberia, and Kenya is shipping to Ethiopia, and DRC is shipping to Lesotho. I mean, we have to have more of that happening on the continent in order for Africa to become more self-reliant and to produce more of the products that don't only meet demand in the African market, but can meet global demand as well. And I'll just say this, that what's happened with COVID and with the supply of vaccine and PPE is a perfect example. Supply chains broke down. People couldn't get PPE from China and Korea and other places. And this was an opportunity for Africa to step in and to start producing PPE itself to meet, masks and so forth, to meet the needs of African people and not just wait to get it from other places. I also think it's incredible advance that Africans are now being partnered with major companies like Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson to produce vaccine for COVID on the continent. And now that malaria vaccine has come into play, I'm hoping to see that Africa, which suffers from malaria probably more than any other continent, will also be producing their own malaria vaccines. So that's a long answer to the question, but the key is diversification of African products, value addition on the continent.
Thank you so much. So I hope with your wise words, someone drafting policies will definitely implement. On to my next question. Given Africa's low percentage of regional trade, I think it's about 18%, as well as small share of global trade, which is minute, as you mentioned, 3%, and FDI, foreign direct investments, which is even more minute, which is, I think, less than 2%. What's your personal outlook for the continent of Africa with regards to international trade and FDI? And what role do you think the private sector, including from the US, can play in this field?
Well, thank you, Ayo. Again, just to follow up on the previous question, this is really about what has to happen in African countries in order for them to be able to scale up their production, both for local supply as well as for regional and global trade. And I think that we have to address the supply side constraints. One of the largest supply side constraints in Africa is access to power, electricity, which clearly affects the competitiveness. I've had the privilege over the years of visiting a number of African factories all across the continent, producing all sorts of products, eyeglasses, toys, apparel, value-added agricultural products. I have not been to one African factory that did not use a backup generator. And of course, once you're using a backup generator, you not only have higher cost for production of your product, but you also are affecting the environment, right? So we have to look at these supply side constraints. We have to address issues like finance. A lot of African companies, especially smaller ones, women-owned, youth-owned companies, don't have access to the finance they need. So we need to scale up finance and capital that goes to businesses in Africa, whether in the production of goods or services. The digital economy, I think last year, Africa had a lot of investment into digital platforms. That's like great news, but we need a lot more of that, and we need it in other sectors as well. And I think the US government can play a role in terms of the policies it has. What will it do about AGOA? Will it negotiate free trade agreements? But I also think that the doing business environment is in the hands of African leaders. How easy is it for businesses, whether they're local businesses or foreign businesses, to get licenses, to resolve commercial disputes? These are things that are in the hands of the African governments. And by improving the doing business environment, they will, in our view, attract more investment. They will make it easier for their own entrepreneurs to do well, and for foreign businesses who come and invest to also do well.
Thank you for that. I'm going to open the questions to the floor. If anyone has any questions, feel free to populate it in the chat box. There's no sequence to picking these questions, but okay, I'm going to go for, I don't know who this is from, but the question is, if the US invested $11 billion USD in infrastructure projects, how does that compare with investments from China, which are quite significant too?
Well, of course, what I'm saying is not that, it's not a competition between the US and China. First of all, everyone needs to understand that the US and China are not the only countries that are in Africa. Africa has partners from all around the world, and it should. The same reasons that the US and China are there are the reasons that France and the UK and Malaysia and India and Brazil and so many others are in Africa. So this is not about let's compete between the US and China in Africa. I was raising the issue because while people think about what China does, and they are very good at talking about what they do, the US, frankly, is not as good at talking about some of the things that it does. And that $11 billion that's been going into MCC infrastructure projects, I've seen with my own eyes, the kind of benefits that are accruing to African countries and African people because of those projects. And of course, MCC is not the only US government agency that's investing in Africa. The United States is still the largest provider of development assistance to the continent. USAID, State Department, we provide a tremendous amount of aid. We are the largest donors of malaria and also HIV/AIDS medications. So we do a lot of things, but this is not about brag about what the US does versus what China does. Africa, I think, needs and wants a range of partners. And what I'm saying is that I think the US, both the government and the US private sector, are excellent partners. There's not a country I've gone to, and I've gone to many, many countries on the continent many times, that says, we'd like more US investors. We like US products. We want to be able to partner with you. And we'd like to find out how we can get more investment and more partnerships from American firms. And so that's what CCA does. That's our goal, to urge our member companies, as well as others, to look at Africa and what Africa offers, and to not just go to Africa to do good, but to go to Africa to do well. And you can do both in Africa. So again, I think that people need to just know more about the kinds of things that we do and the kinds of opportunities that are in Africa.
Thank you once again, Florie. That question was actually from Chris Decker. Now I've got another question from Karine. African economies are more challenged by climate change, which you touched on, both in terms of transition risk and physical risk. I'm not entirely sure what the question is, but I'm guessing in terms of climate change, how do African economies address this issue in terms of transition and physical risk?
Well, I think I'm not an expert in this area, but let me say this much. I think that the crisis of global warming is something that all countries around the world need to focus on, and there needs to be collaboration to address climate change. It's something that affects every country. Lots of countries in Africa, as this questioner has said, are impacted by climate change. And but the Africans are not the ones who are the major producers of global warming. They're not the major contributors to global warming. So what that actually means is that there has to be a transition process and a transition period so that Africa can continue to harvest the resources that it has, especially gas, which is a better option than coal, wood, and others, and provides a better lifestyle for African people. We can't have it, excuse me, that the developed world will not invest in the production of gas in Africa. That is a transition fuel. And then I think investment in renewables in Africa is also really critical. Hydro, some of the others that are, wind, solar. Africa is one of the best places to invest in that. So I think there has to be a multi-pronged strategy for this transition period that invest into the production of power on the continent for the African people, so that their deficit in power is not going to just leave them behind forever, while the rest of the world, which did all the polluting, essentially has gone forward and now can talk about climate change. We need to make sure that Africa has the space that's needed and the support and the capital that's needed to address climate change there, and to invest in transition products like gas as well as in renewables.
Thank you. And just to buttress your point, you're very right. I am privileged to have worked in with USAID in the power sector, where they are trying to address the constraint on the grid, and they're trying to have them look off grid, which renewables, solar, wind, and the likes.
Yeah.
Now I have a question from Mr. Ravi Ramamurthy. He asked Florie, is it still true that 70% or more of US FDI in Africa is tied to oil and gas? And if so, how can we broaden the engagement of the US COS? I'm not too sure what he means by COS. So once again, he's asking if it's true 70% or more of US foreign direct investments in Africa is tied to oil and gas. And if so, how can we broaden the engagements of US companies? Thank you for the question.
So I don't know the specific number, but it would not surprise me that a majority of US investment in the continent is in commodities such as oil and gas. It's not just oil and gas, though. There are other commodities in which the US is investing. But the thing that I think is interesting is that for almost all the countries that invest in Africa, many of them also have a huge portion in raw commodities, in developing Africa's commodities, whether it's oil, gas, copper, diamonds, whatever it may be. And this again goes to some of the systemic issues that we've seen in terms of Africa's position in the global economy. Much of Africa's raw materials, as I said, are harvested by companies from other countries. That's not a bad thing, though, because you do want to attract investment into your economy in sectors that are available for growth, right? So you don't want to leave the copper in the ground. You don't want to not increase agricultural production. That's another area where U.S. companies are starting to invest in Africa in agribusiness. But I would just say that the challenge for Africa and the challenge for partnering with the U.S. as well as other partners is to slowly shift, maybe quickly shift the investments from the sectors that they're in now, which are the raw commodities, oil, gas, et cetera, into value-added production, manufacturing, industry, and into sectors in the digital economy. Finance, I think, is another area, telecom. These are all areas in Africa that are really open, fintech, for investment. And so I think in the US, our Prosper Africa program is working to do that. I know DFC is, Development Finance Corporation, is investing in sectors that go beyond gas and infrastructure. The US Trade and Development Agency is also doing work in Africa in health and digital, ICT. So yes, Mr. Ramamurthy, it is true that the majority of investment still lies even at this point, but that number is coming down. And what's going up now are investments in other sectors beyond oil and gas and raw commodities in Africa.
Thank you. And I believe even policymakers now also looking outwards from oil and gas into non-oil industries.
Yeah.
I've got a question from Elias. Do you think the usage of common currency for trade within Africa would benefit Africa? If not, how do you think it would affect the continent?
Well, again, I'm not the expert, but one of the exciting things that I think is happening under the Afcfta, besides reducing the barriers across borders, but also setting up as many harmonized policies and platforms across the continent, so that as you go from one economy to another in Africa, there are what, 54, 55 countries, you don't have to constantly be dealing with different rules, different regulations, different currencies. So yes, I think that creation of a common currency across Africa will facilitate greater trade and movement of goods, as well as people across African borders. Again, I've traveled a lot in Africa. I've got lots of different different denominations of currencies and so forth here, and from my own personal point of view, it would certainly help if, when I'm taking a trip to, one African country, and I have to get a currency there, and then, I hop on a plane and go to the next country, and I have to get a different currency there. So I think I'm not a business person in that sense, but I think it is important that Africa harmonize as much of its platforms that affect trade, that affect investment, so that the movement of goods and people across the continent is facilitated.
Thank you. And just to add, seeing I am working at the central bank, well, a lot of French African countries do have CFA as a currency, which allows a lot of trade.
Mm-hmm.
The English Commonwealth African countries have agreed to, well, I guess implement, but haven't yet implemented.
Right.
So it's a good question, and I definitely.
It is. It's a very good question.
All right, I'm gonna ask one last question, and it's gonna be from Ben. And his question is, does CCA Corporate Council on Africa get involved in supporting student mobility between the African countries and other parts of the world? And are there programs to help university graduates find careers or career opportunities in African-based companies?
Well, I have to tell you that supporting students is not one of the things that CCA focuses on, but let me say this much. I think capacity building and training so that US companies can employ and have the skill sets they need from Africans is something that a lot of our members are focused on and are doing. We have member companies whose entire teams on the ground in key African countries, whether Kenya or Zambia or Ghana or Nigeria, are local hires. And that's something that the US tends to do more, US companies tend to do more of. They tend to be more proactive in the skills training that's needed. So technology transfer, skills transfer. This is something that I think US companies tend to do well. So, to the person that asked, no, CCA is not involved in student activities, but I do think that there are US programs like the Young Africa Leaders Initiative, YALI. You should look into that one. And then in terms of, I don't know what country this person is located in, but you should feel free to look at US companies that are there on the ground in your country to see what kinds of jobs and positions are opening. I'll just use one example. I know that Flutterwave, which actually was started in Nigeria, they have recently, in the last year and a half, invested in Zambia. All of their people that they have brought on board, they're a payments platform, they're in the fintech area, have been Zambian nationals. So, you need to look for companies that are doing that are there and not just bringing over hundreds or thousands of their own workers and setting them up, instead of, really trying to work with, train, and employ Africans. And, there's so many African students, incredible people that I've met over the years who don't have the job opportunities there. And the price and the consequence for that is that, there's a brain drain. But there is now the reverse rebrain that's happening, which is also very exciting. I know many people who have been in the US for many years and have now returned to their home countries of Ethiopia, Nigeria, South Africa. Oh my gosh! But I have friends who I met here, who did their studies here, who worked here, and then basically have now gone back to the continent. So I do think there are opportunities on the ground there. I just encourage this young person, young man, young woman, to look at what the opportunities are in your sector, whatever you're trained in, and see what jobs are on the ground that are being offered by any company, hopefully a US company, but any company that's there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Florie. Once again, the President and CEO of the Corporate Council on Africa, based in Washington, DC. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Ravi. And thank you once again, Florie.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Ayo. Thank you, Florie. Florie, that was just a fantastic overview of what's happening across the continent, across a range of industries, across a range of companies and sectors. Your deep knowledge of the continent comes through with every sentence and every question you responded to. Thank you so much for providing that macro sense of the US-Africa relationship. What we're going to do now, as I said earlier, is dive down to a more micro level and look at how one company is contributing to the development of Africa. And I should mention that in the context of what we just heard from Florie, that Africa is still very dependent on commodity exports, and that tends to expose Africa to the price cycles, which can be quite severe in the case of commodities. So how can Africa diversify into other sectors? And she mentioned specifically areas like technology, digital, and telecommunications. And that's really what we're going to look at in this next panel. We're going to focus on this company, Safaricom. If you don't know this, it is one of the largest companies in terms of market cap, maybe the largest, but I let Dilip correct me if I'm wrong. And also one of the largest in terms of revenues, and has made a real impact on the lives of average Kenyans. So it's an opportunity to look at how innovation can help to improve the standard of living for the average person in Africa. And let me introduce our speaker. We're delighted to have Dilip Pal, who is going to be representing Safaricom in this discussion. He is Chief Finance Officer of the company since November of 2020. Prior to that, he worked in Thailand, and he has 29 years or more of experience working in industry in the area of finance across several industries, telecoms, fast-moving consumer goods, engineering, and so on. He has a master's in commerce from Calcutta University and a bachelor of commerce from Goenka College of Commerce. He's also a certified chartered accountant and a certified cost accountant from India. He has held board positions in a number of leading companies in Singapore, Thailand, Bangladesh, and India. He's married and has one daughter. Dilip, welcome to the conference. I'm going to turn it over to you for your initial presentation, and then we'll get back with some Q&A. Over to you, Dilip.
Thank you, Ravi. Please confirm that you can hear me well.
Yep, everything is good.
Thank you. I think my team is helping to set up the presentation, but as they do it, first of all, thank you very much for the introduction. I'm here to talk about the journey of M-Pesa, the greatest invention in the mobile financial services, which the company which is dealing with is Safaricom. I'm very, very happy and honored to be part of this discussion. And I hope as I talk about the story of transforming lives, you get a glimpse of what you have done in this continent. So I'll start with a short video that introduces M-Pesa, our mobile money transfer services. I will start by giving you a brief context of Safaricom and walk you through the evolution of M-Pesa in Africa. Safaricom was established back in 2000, becoming Kenya's first mobile operator. We are a publicly listed company at the Nairobi Security Exchange in Kenya. Today, we have more than 40 million customers and a population of about 55 million people in Kenya. Safaricom is Kenya's largest mobile telecommunication service provider with 65% market share and the country's largest financial service provider through M-Pesa, which has more than 28 million customers. M-Pesa currently is available in Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Lesotho, Ghana, and Egypt. We also provide 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G coverage, collectively to more than 95% of the population, and in addition, home and business fiber connectivity. In the last financial year, Safaricom had an annual turnover of $2.6 billion with a profit of $680 million. At Safaricom, our purpose is transforming lives, and this has been our guiding light throughout our journey. Equally, we have strongly focused on building a sustainable business, and we believe that we can only be successful if the community around us is successful. From our latest sustainability report, published in September 2021, we made a social contribution equivalent to 9.7 times our profit and 5.2% of Kenya's GDP. This included 190,000 direct jobs and more than 1 million indirect jobs. We launched M-Pesa almost 15 years ago to facilitate efficient transfer of money between Kenyans who would send money up country using buses and envelopes. The service was born out of our purpose of transforming lives. Driven by our purpose of transforming lives and our consistent focus on customer needs, M-Pesa has now grown to become the largest fintech service across the continent. I have packaged the whole evolution of M-Pesa in Africa in a short video. So, what has been the real impact of M-Pesa? Kenya's formal financial inclusion grew threefold from below 30% to over 80% in 2021, and now ranks third highest in Africa. Due to various innovations, M-Pesa has largely contributed to the growth in formal financial inclusion across the countries we operate in. In 2007, we only had 5 million bank accounts serving a population of 35 million. Agents were important as Kenya was and remains a cash-intensive economy with more than 9 of every 10 transactions still done in cash. A wide agent network would make it convenient to cash in and cash out of M-Pesa. At the time we launched the services, we expected we would only have about 1 million customers at most. However, by our second year, we had 2 million customers. This showed that we had cracked a real customer need, a real customer problem. We continued to build on M-Pesa, innovating and investing in the services to meet customer needs. We soon added the ability to pay utility bills, saving customers from having to travel and queue for hours every month to pay electricity and water bills. Then we partnered with Western Union and more recently PayPal, Google, AliExpress, amongst others, to provide international money transfers. Our customers can now send and receive money and make payments from more than 200 markets globally. We also partnered with banks to enable customers to save and borrow through M-Pesa linked bank accounts without filling any paperwork. Beyond savings and lending, we introduced payments to business for goods and services with a service known as Lipa na M-Pesa or Pay with M-Pesa. Today, more than 300,000 businesses accept goods on the service, and about 8 of every 10 cashless payments in Kenya are through this service. We have also partnered with CarePay and Pharma Access to introduce M-Tiba, which is an M-Pesa linked wallet that enables people and organizations to save for healthcare. In 2021, we crossed more than 50 million customers across 7 countries that we operate. And every day we handle more than 50 million transactions. We now have more than 500,000 businesses on M-Pesa, transacting more than $7.5 billion a month. We have the widest agent network across the continent at more than 500,000 agents. This means that in some countries, our customers on average are never to travel more than 2 kilometers from an agent. In our last financial year, we facilitated more than 15 billion transactions, generating revenues in excess of $1.1 billion. We are building on this success to drive the next phase of growth and to enable our customers achieve more. About 2 years ago, we announced the launch of M-Pesa Africa. M-Pesa Africa is a joint venture between Safaricom and Vodafone to consolidate our resources and capabilities to build Africa's largest fintech and digital financial services ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, the digital shift across the globe means that M-Pesa will have to evolve to meet the financial needs of our customers in a digital world. We are therefore investing in a standardized digital cloud-native M-Pesa platform that will provide us with increased capabilities and uptime. To enhance customer experience and to meet the needs of our digital customers, we launched the M-Pesa Super App last year, which has become the focal point of our strategy. Powering day-to-day lifestyles of our customers, the Super App has introduced convenience, improved e-commerce platforms, complementing the traditional business model of person-to-person mobile money transfers. Watch this short clip to learn more about the Super App. The M-Pesa Super App sports a fresh design and that makes the best of smartphone capabilities to bring innovation, convenience, and security together. This will be a key highlight for the more than 5 million businesses, especially in the informal sector, accepting payments through M-Pesa person-to-person transactions. On the home page, a customer sees a unified M-Pesa balance, including the amount they can access by overdraft. This provides better clarity when it comes to planning their spend. Our customers can also go offline. That enables the customers to use the app even when they are out of data bundles, have switched off their data, or simply go offline. Leveraging on big data will provide customers with a personalized smart budgeting tool and analytics on their usage. They can set financial goals and the tool will nudge and guide them towards their goal. On the app, we have given more focus to international money transfer under the Transact tab and financial health under the Grow tab. A new credit marketplace will promote sustainable lending by providing a unified credit score against which different financial patterns can lend. The credit score will address current concerns around high indebtedness and also enabling our partners to offer differentiated products based on the risk appetite. In addition to financial health, the tab features our new offerings around wealth management and insurance. The app has been a quite success with more than 4 million customer downloads and 2 million active users. Over the next 1 year, we are targeting 5 billion active users. We also plan to have more than 150 high quality mini apps. So far, we have onboarded about 20 mini apps with more than 65 under development. In the last 14 years, M-Pesa, our success has been achieved by financial, including more than 50 million customers. In the next decade, M-Pesa will be guiding and providing a digital platform as we extend our focus beyond financial inclusion to financial health. I'll finish this the Super App section with a short video which demonstrates our business customers' testimonial on the M-Pesa app and how they use it to conduct their business.
My name is Robert Toho. I'm from Kureine. I am a teacher. I'm a businessman, and I'm a community social worker. My business is mostly majorly for recreational purposes. I have a gym, we have a DJing school, we have a PlayStation. I am a teacher by profession, so I have little time to be around my business. All the M-Pesa business transactions usually come directly to the M-Pesa business phone. So even when I'm not in or around the business, I'm able to know that so-and-so has paid up for a service. My businesses majorly are, service providing. When I want to buy maybe, stock, maybe like printing papers for my cyber, or I want to buy spirit for my kinyozi. So it helps me when I want to purchase anything. And even I want to pay, my employees, I can pay them directly, using the business till app instead of giving them cash.
To apply for a business till.
So we are also looking to build on the success of our financial services. In Kenya, more than 40 financial institutions and virtually all banks connect to M-Pesa. We are expanding on these partnerships to build a credit marketplace where customers can access a variety of financial services at competitive terms based on their needs. M-Pesa Africa is also looking at acquiring a best-in-class investment and wealth management platform. We aim to empower our customers going from a financial inclusion to financial health by achieving more resilience by growing their wealth and savings. Through global partnerships, M-Pesa has been key to the achievement of HDG 10.C on transactions cost for migrant remittances. On average, we are on course to achieve the HDG target 10 on reduced inequalities years before the UN target date. Remittances is another sector where we can make even more differences to our customers. Last year, we powered $3.6 billion in remittances. Through more partnerships, we aim to grow, especially regional remittances, more particularly have products targeted at SMEs. The lack of remittance products has especially been a hindrance to unlocking regional trade, which for many countries remains at quite a low levels. Lastly, we are looking at further expanding and building on our application program interfaces, which is popularly called APIs. We already provide a fully established set of APIs that today empower more than 42,000 independent developers and businesses. Through these APIs, business and innovators can build and offer their functionality on top of M-Pesa to reach out to our more than 50 million customers. In turn, customers can benefit from a wide variety of services and opportunities. By expanding these APIs, we are looking at having more firms providing mini apps both to customers and other organizations through our two super apps, Super App for individual customers and Super App for businesses. We are encouraged by the impact of M-Pesa on driving financial inclusion and health in Kenya since 2007. We remain guided by our purpose of transforming lives in Kenya, and we are keen to not leave anyone behind on this. In our quest to drive diversity and inclusion, we are launching the Dot Braille Watch, which enables the visually impaired person to read their M-Pesa and other SMS notification in a private and secured way. For this, we have partnered with Kenya Union of the Blind to distribute the watches and smartphones to visually impaired university students across Kenya. As we go digital, we are expanding our capabilities and products beyond customers using our host networks to all customers in our markets. In conclusion, we continue to hitch our success on connecting customers to more opportunities, whether as individuals or as entrepreneurs. We remain committed to connecting people to people, knowledge and opportunities across the globe. True to our purpose, we continue to transform lives. Thank you very much. I now hand over back to Ravi for the Q&A session.
Thank you, Dilip. That was so impressive. The number of services you've expanded into over time, and also the number of people, the number of lives that you're touching with these innovations. You had tremendous success within Kenya. You talked about your market share is very impressive. The volumes you're doing are very impressive. The super app you're creating, which I have to think is inspired, like it has been inspired everywhere else, by the Chinese examples of Alibaba and WeChat, has so much more room to expand and provide additional services. But I'm wondering, in terms of how you transfer these innovations to other parts of Africa. You mentioned that you're in 6 or 7 countries already. By the way, we have one of the members in the audience who's from Ghana, has even volunteered to help you grow your business in Ghana if you so wish. So maybe you can have private conversation with that person afterwards. But tell me, as you look at these 7 countries and other countries where you may have tried to enter, but maybe not had the same degree of success, what explains the difference in effectiveness or your success in these other markets? And how do they compare with Kenya in terms of the ability to get into, for instance, financial services, because sometimes that is restricted to banks and so on and so forth. Just talk us through the challenges of moving this innovation to other parts of Africa.
Thanks, Ravi. I think that's a great question and comes in the context of Kenyan success has not necessarily been replicated across the globe in the manner and the shape and the scale that you see here. I think at the core of what you're trying to do, what we have done is solving a customer problem. So as long as you know what the customer needs are and what environment that you're operating in, then you are progressing. So I think some of the success stories or some of the not so success stories that we hear from other markets is also coming from the fact that you can't just replicate. It's okay, it's successful in M-Pesa and go and replicate it. No, it doesn't work that way. As you rightly mentioned, I think yeah, we are I think 8 countries that we are present in Africa, but the degree of success within these African markets are also different. I think one, of course, the level of financial inclusion, the regulation, and the whole the innovation pipeline that you're able to do, and more importantly, the Kenyan success story, which started with a very, very strong agent network. At times, it's not easy to do that. It's always what comes first. I think if you would have spoken to people in Safaricom before, they would have told you that it never started as something that you're really looking at as a you want to make a lot of money out of it, or it's not necessarily bad. That's the, I think there was a problem, and that problem was to be solved. Mm-hmm. And you are investing a lot to be able to make sure that the agent network is closest to the customer they reside. So when you don't have a bank, but you know that there is an agent network that you can reach out, right? I think it's the combination of all of that has resulted into some success stories, very strong success stories, some not so successful stories. But from our side, I think Ravi, as you rightly mentioned, so the M-Pesa, we created a JV with Vodacom called M-Pesa Africa, whose really the focus is to make sure that we don't duplicate the efforts in terms of product development, how quickly you can launch those products, of course, in an environment regulation and which those countries are. And also within the context of the success that I see, I think some of the countries, one of the parameters that you look at is how much of the money is moving as percentage of GDP, and some countries actually have reached 30 to 50% of the GDP moving through the financial services through M-Pesa that we're offering. Mm. So there is not a silver bullet, Ravi, that that you can just go and replicate everywhere. Mm-hmm. And M-Pesa in Kenya has been a very, very strong on innovation, and that's what we do now. Everything starts from Kenya, and then you're able to replicate it faster in other places, much faster than what we have done before with the current the partnership that we have with Vodacom in other markets. So that's where I think I will leave on this.
Terrific. I think one thing that may not be obvious to all the viewers is that Safaricom is actually a joint venture between Vodafone and the Kenyan state-owned company, correct? And Vodafone being a multinational player, state-owned company being a local player, but also being a state-owned company. Joint ventures between multinationals and state-owned companies, Western multinationals and state-owned companies, don't always work, but Safaricom seems to have really worked very well. Any insights and any secrets on how you make a joint venture of that kind work?
So it's a great question, Ravi. I think I mean just for all the listeners and viewers, our shareholder structure is as Ravi mentioned, it's 40% actually owned by Vodacom plus Vodafone, 35% owned by government of Kenya, and 25% we are a publicly listed company, as I mentioned. I mean, first of all, let's acknowledge that the pride that Safaricom takes in transforming lives. So we have done, and I think the numbers speak for itself. So we have done that, and which means that we have been a very, very successful company in this continent. And as you look back, you always see that the GOK has been our partner, and Vodafone and Vodacom has been one of our key partners. I think what we do is that we leverage on the strengths. There is a strong support to the management. The government of Kenya really supports us. They don't interfere in the day-to-day affairs. There is a strong board participation from GOK's board nomination. And then we do have a lot of learning, cross-pollination from the Vodafone and Vodacom markets. So it works very well. There are the commercial benefits of being part of a Vodafone opportunities, and there is a very strong bonding that I think the Kenyan entity has developed with the GOK, because we are actually transforming lives. It contributes the numbers that we spoke about, the financial inclusion, everything that we do in the economic, whether it is for the bringing in new innovation, not only in M-Pesa, in our connectivity businesses as well, plus also the work that we do through other foundations. So it's truly a reflection of how we transform life. So that's actually it's really work. And I said this in many forums and publicly, Ravi. I have seen companies talking about purpose. A lot of companies claim that they believe in purpose. Some companies do that for CR purpose, but I have not seen something close to this that I have been here in just over 1 year. Every single employees believe in this, completely committed to this, and that's what I think makes it a great company. And this stories of how this partnership worked with the GOK and the Vodafone, I think it's a great success story. There is no recipe. I think we just leverage on the strength of both and make sure that what we offer to the customers are what customer actually really needs and solves their real problems.
So that's a terrific insight. What you're saying is, at the end of the day, if you focus on the customer and actually transforming lives, then it's a win-win for everyone. And therefore, it becomes easier for all parties to work together. And you've certainly shown how wonderful the outcomes can be when you can get that kind of partnership. Tell me, when you develop these technologies, I mean, you have the advantage of Vodafone has deep technical expertise, not only in Kenya, but in other parts of the world. And you probably can draw on that. But you also then have, I assume, some local capability to do innovation. Can you speak to that? I mean, how much of these developments are you actually doing in Kenya? And do you do it all in-house, or are you also working with other partners? Because you mentioned that you're trying to develop APIs so that other local players can become part of your ecosystem. Just talk to us a little bit about how you are dividing up the work between, say, your other offices and other R&D centers and the Kenyan operation and private players within Kenya.
Yeah, so Ravi, you touched a very important topic in terms of what we're dealing with today, the innovation really driving what we're doing. And that's at the core of everything that we do. Now I'll divide it into kind of phases. I think we got greatly benefited by Vodafone's and Vodacom's strong understanding within the connectivity business, within the GSM, whether it is the voice, mobile data, or even later on the fixed services that we have launched. I think there is a huge opportunity that we really leveraged on, because those markets have launched much before us. So we kind of try to make sure that those are replicated very quickly, and these are very, very seamless. So we do have those interactions, we do have those opportunities that people could come in, go learn from there, or people could just come in here and just implement it on those parts. But when it came to M-Pesa and the financial inclusion, I think there is a lot that happened in Kenya, which kind of everybody else tried to replicate, including Vodafone and Vodacom. So it's just the other way. I think when it came to financial inclusion and financial services in M-Pesa, it was Kenya at the center of everything that we're doing. And we were at the, we never hesitated. And I was speaking to some of the people who have been here before, including our current chair, who was, as you know, the founder, CEO, and also the one Michael Joseph, who has launched M-Pesa in Kenya. So he used to always say that we just focused on what will, always ahead of time. You don't necessarily looked at every time you're putting in investment, okay, is it going to give us the return? We looked at, actually, he was telling me, we looked at more as will customers be loyal to us if we give one more innovative product, we solve their problems? And that's how things have developed here. So on the financial services, it has always been Kenya. But that was the peak. Now what's happening, I think it's happening more than that. As I was mentioning during my presentation, M-Pesa Africa which is developing a common product strategy wherein we pull in resources from everywhere. So they come and, that is from Kenya, I know that is from, other markets, that they all come together, and they are the people who are really driving this. And then it comes to the developer ecosystem, and that's like an open ecosystems, anybody come and do that. We are very, very open to that part. So there is one area where for Kenya business alone, that whole API integration to the independent developers, that continues every time, within the products and services that we have, we always see something new that's coming up. Yeah. And I was talking about in the context of super app, the way that we're thinking about, as you rightly mentioned, it's kind of Alipay. So the mini apps come in, and those mini apps are coming and getting developed through those innovation and the developers community. They're part of this whole integration. The current phase is kind of a more pull-in, and we are not, we can actually simultaneously launch our products across markets, and we're waiting for something to happen in one market and doing that. In the past, it was not like that. So that's what the phases of innovation that I want to talk
about. We have about 3 or 4 minutes left. And as you heard in the introduction, the president of the university said that I work on reverse innovation. The idea that sometimes an innovation can actually be born in the emerging markets and then find its way to other parts of the world. I often mention e-payments by Safaricom and the M-Pesa as an example of something that took off much sooner in Kenya than it did in the West. Here, we still carry credit cards and cash, and we're slowly trying to wean ourselves out of those and get into digital forms of payment. Could you, in that context, if there is an example, tell me something that you are doing today in Kenya or another African country where you are ahead of the West, something that in 5 years we may start to do here. Is there any example currently bubbling through your system that we don't know about or is not very well known? Where do you think, because once you create the platform and you create the penetration of the mobile phone and the people getting into the habit of using the phone to do all kinds of things, in turn, that will produce another wave of innovations. And I think emerging markets like Kenya could be at the global forefront in some of those new services. So if you have an example, we'd love to hear it.
Ravi, of course, this is a public forum, some of this that I will not be able to share in that detail. Okay. But I think the way I would look at it is, it's definitely not in the areas of connectivity, the traditional business that we have been running on. Within that, what I think the West and the rest of the I would say the developed markets can probably find and implement and really understand how do you serve with such a low paying customers, the whole concept of the very low. I mean, we serve very low as you see the numbers, and we really serve everybody. So it's not an elite set of services that are providing service to everyone. I think that is something I'm pretty sure that the other markets can learn, and we do that. I think within the Vodafone ecosystem, they come and see how you are doing that. It's the chain of efficiency that you're able to drive, even with the revenue per customers, which is very low, but you are still generating profit in a very commercially viable way, right? So that's something I would say. I don't want to call that innovation. I think it's something just that we master over a period of time. Then the other part I would say on the financial inclusion part, I think it's as acknowledged by everyone, M-Pesa has been the innovation engine in the financial inclusion country, and now going beyond this country to other parts of this continent. The way we, as a telco, as a connectivity provider, integrate with everything that is coming through a fintech, there are not many examples. So we have a huge opportunity that how do you leverage your connectivity business that you have. Then you have your, whether it is GSM, whether it's fixed business, and you have your financial services. How you use the big data analytics and your whole AI and machine learning to enable that customers' stickiness, to get the customers' loyalty. They don't need to get out of an ecosystem, if we're talking about whether it's for the business, whether it is for super app. We are not there, as I said, the internet penetration is very low. The smartphone penetration is also very low. I think that's the next level of, you could say that the smartphone penetration is very high in West, but the things that we're doing here actually are not done in a very integrated way that we are trying to do here in Kenya. I think that would be one area.
Terrific point. And it's not, I would consider that innovation. When you have been able to bring these very valuable products and services and make them affordable down to the common person at the base of the economic pyramid, that is an enormous innovation and enormous contribution. We'll have to leave it at that. I'm afraid our time is up. Dilip, I want to thank you so much on behalf of Northeastern University, the Center for Emerging Markets and the Africa Global Initiative. Thanks also to your team, Wanzela and others who worked hard to put this session together. I thank the technology for working, because here's Dilip is sitting in Addis, I think, and we are here in the US, and you would think we were all in the same room. So thank you very much again. And we look forward, Dilip, to having you in person on campus whenever the situation allows. Thank you
so much. Thank you so much, Ruby, for having me here. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. All right, we now turn to our final session. And as I said earlier, we sort of started out with a wide view of the relationship between the US and Africa. Then we zoomed down to look at one company and see its enormous impact on the lives of people in Kenya and beyond. Now we're going to zoom back out and look at the US-Africa relationship from a more political perspective. And it's my great pleasure and honor to introduce Ambassador Rama Yade, who is the director of the Atlantic Council's Africa Center and a senior fellow of the Europe Center. She's also a teacher of African Affairs at Mohammed VI Polytechnic University in Morocco and at Sciences Po in Paris. She is a Senegalese and French citizen. Ambassador Yade has over 15 years of experience working in French, European, and international politics. And here's the most interesting part. At the age of 30, she was appointed the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs and Human Rights of the Republic of France, the first ever French Minister for Human Rights, and the first woman of African descent to become a member of the French cabinet. Very, very impressive and very amazing. Later, she became Deputy Minister of Sport and the Ambassador of France to UNESCO. Real pleasure, Ambassador, to have your participation in this program. Let me briefly also introduce Jonathan Isoli, who is going to be moderating the discussion. He's a Congolese mathematician working on the geometry of string theory. That sounds scary enough. I mean, I don't know how you actually do that, but someone working on the geometry of string theory. But he's also interested in Africa and the developments in Africa. He's the Benjamin Pierce Fellow at Harvard. Before he joined Northeastern, he's a Marie Curie Fellow and a Wiener Anspach Fellow at Cambridge University. He is a passionate advocate for African excellence in the sciences and women's access to education. In 2018, he was named a next Einstein Fellow as one of the best African scientists. He's on the advisory board of Malaika and a jury of the L'Oreal UNESCO program or award for women in science. Jonathan received the 2018 International Dunia Award. And in the middle of the pandemic, he founded a startup that 3D prints free protective equipment distributed in over 500 hospitals across the Congo. I'm going to turn it over to you, Ambassador Yade, and Jonathan, take it away. Ambassador, would you like maybe start with some opening remarks? Is that the plan? Please.
Okay. Hello, thank you very much for this introduction. I'm very happy to take part in this important and timely conversation with so many friends and colleagues. I'm going to be very brief because I wouldn't like to take the floor too long. I know that the Zoom space is very competitive, and it's important for our audience to to share its views with us. So just a few words to introduce myself and say a few words about my mission here in Washington, D.C. As you said, Mr. Ramamurti, I am currently the director of the Atlantic Council's Africa Center and senior fellow at the Europe Center. It's a way to summarize everything. I have a foot in 3 continents, in Africa, where I was born, since I was born in Senegal, and I am also a Senegalese citizen. And I spent my first 10 years in this country, and I have never forgotten the country, since a large part of my family is still there, and the connection is very strong. My foot in the continent is also professional, since I am a teacher at the Polytechnic University of Mohammed VI in Morocco. I'm teaching African affairs, of course. And in my current work as director of the Atlantic Council's Africa Center, Africa is everywhere in my life, since the morning until the evening. It's my passion, is my job. I'm very lucky. And I have another foot on the European continent. Like I said, I am also a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Europe Center. Since after I left Africa, I grew up in Paris. I am graduated from Sciences Po Paris, where I am a teacher too. I'm a teacher in the school where I was graduated. It's a second reason to be very lucky. And I had all my professional life in Paris, since I am a high civil servant. That's my real job. I'm a high civil servant at the French Senate. I'm not a staffer. I'm not a political appointee. Really, it is a job for life. I'm lucky, where I belong to an administration dedicated specifically to the French Senate. I'm taking the time to explain because it's very specific to French institutions. After that, I just had what I thought to be a break when I joined French politics. I joined the government of a previous French president, Nicolas Sarkozy, as a Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs and Human Rights. Human rights is another passion of mine, and everything I'm doing in my work currently is related to human rights, freedom of speech, rights for women's rights, children's rights, all these important rights related to human beings that for me should be promoted and defended every day and everywhere at the same level. And after this important and critical mission, that was a first experience for our country, because it was the first time government appointed someone to handle human rights in our foreign policy. So it was a bit noisy and challenging, but it was really another reason to feel lucky, because I was doing what I liked. And after that, I have been appointed, because it could not last, promoting human rights in foreign policy. It's something very difficult, and I experienced that about Libya, about the DRC, about Colombia, about the United States too, regarding death penalty. So sometimes it can be difficult with our partners to share our views on human rights. And when you consider yourself as the country of human rights, because France considers itself like that. So it may be challenging. And when you have to deal with human rights in your own country, it's much more challenging. So it could not last, unfortunately, or fortunately for some people. I joined another ministry, the Ministry of Sports. It was something different, but I continued the work and the mission on human rights, because you can struggle there against homophobia, for example. You can struggle for women rights. Athletes need equality too in sports. And we obtain the organization as country of major competitions and games like the Euro of football in 2016 or golf, the Ryder Cup 2018. So it was a great experience to share all these emotions with our champions, icons, legends, and work in the same time for sustainable development and human rights too. And then I finished my political career there. The last step was ambassador at UNESCO, where I promoted culture and education in this multilateral UN organization. No, my last step was to try to run for French presidency, but it's another story. And since then, I joined the Washington. You understand that I'm not speaking about less about my life than my beliefs, my deep beliefs. That's why I'm sharing this in this format. I joined Washington, D.C. as a consultant for the World Bank because I wanted to dig deeper about African matters. I really think that Africa is the new frontier. I'm not saying that because I was born on the continent, but because it's just the truth. Even if I came from Sweden, for example, I would say the same as an expert of international affairs. It's just what we need to understand if we want to handle global challenges we are facing, and if we want to find new opportunities and a renewal of our concepts. I think the future of this is on the African continent. And I have collaborated with the World Bank on issues related to human capital, which means disability, things like disability, even sports too, of course, as a tool for development. I have worked on this issue. And then in the same time, I have joined the Atlantic Council to continue this work on African matters. And from here, I have, of course, I'm focused on 4 pillars: security, because there's no peace, no development, no growth without peace. So security is important, and my main focus are. I have been named like last year, April 2021. So it's pretty recent, but my work plan is focused on security matters about the Horn, of course, with everything that's happened in Ethiopia, Sahel, and Great Lakes. That's the work plan I have here on security issues. And I'm trying to promote a new African narrative to make people understand that the continent is not only strategic, but it is the oldest continent, the youngest continent, and in a few years, the largest population per region. So only this is enough to say that it is a strategic continent and that needs peace. Prosperity is also important because Africa needs to develop, of course, but maybe here we could change not only the narrative about Africa, but also change the rules, because the rules on the international stage are not always fair when we talk about African nations. So I'm working on climate issues, digital currencies, of course, trade, business, entrepreneurship, very classically, but also trying to take innovative questions like this, digital currencies, climate change, technology, sciences, space race, because the continent needs does not need aid or humanitarian approach, but business, development, and above all, industrial transformation. That's very critical and important. Creative industries is another focus I have. I'm convinced that the African continent has a leadership and a soft power through creative industries and even sports. You know that the NBA just invested in an NBA Africa with the Basketball Africa League, because on sports Africa has a leadership to claim, and it's the same for fashion, for music, for movies, you know, arts, etc. And of course, multilateralism, global challenges we have to deal together, and here not as victim, not as object, but as a subject, an actor. Africa, it needs to voice its needs, its priorities, its vision of the world, and maybe bring solutions to. So that's what we are doing at the Atlantic Council. We are trying to promote, to put these issues at the top of the diplomatic agenda. And at the same time, I have taken this opportunity to tell you my beliefs, what I think is important, what I would like to promote with our teams and with everyone that would like to join our efforts on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Yade. So growing up, I also was born in Africa and grew up in Europe. So I follow your career since the very, very beginning. So it's really an honor to have this conversation with you. So I'm going to start by actually talking about our common experience as global citizens. So Northeastern University is a very global university. Our students come from all around the world as our faculty. And so you're an example of this new type of leadership of people who cross boundaries, that share heritage between different culture. So in view of the history of Africa, what do you think the African diaspora can bring to the continent with that type of experience?
Thank you, Professor Isoli. I feel very honored to engage this discussion with you, knowing your reputation, expertise, and leadership too. So thank you, Northeastern, for having me with Professor Isoli in this conversation. About the diaspora, yes, we are millions to experience the same global citizenship. Maybe it's you know, we are the legacy of history of global Africa. Africa experienced the worst and the best, and the outcome of this global Africa is us as citizens from everywhere, simply human beings, you know. We can be Americans, we can be Europeans, we can be Africans. That's why I think we are very lucky. We are bridges. People don't always understand that we are bridges, and we could be useful to handle global challenges and maybe bring global solutions, not only for Africans, but for every human being, because we are able to understand everyone. Without prejudice, without bias, because we belong to everywhere. And that's just a crazy thing to experience. The first president of Senegal used to say, we are not built in one blood anymore. These times are over. And it's this diaspora, the African diaspora is a miracle. Because Africans are survivors. They survived everything in their own history. You know this history, slavery, colonization, and they are still there. They could have disappeared because this lasted like 15 centuries. The continent lost its population. We are, these days, we are in a period where the continent is finally recovering from this demographic loss. that's a cycle, a historical cycle that is knowing its end these days. And we are entering in a new period, a new cycle, historic cycle, where the continent is getting back its population. I mean, what should have been normal. That's why people who say that there are too many Africans on this earth are just wrong. It's not the truth. It's not the truth. They are under the average they should have reached since a long time. So the diaspora is everywhere, not only in Europe and the United States, but also in Pakistan with the CD, in Iran. You know, it's absolutely not known, but you know, in Russia, you know everything about the famous Pushkin, for example. His ancestor was an African. A few days ago, I was meeting with the embassy of Japan in Washington, D.C., and I was talking with him about the famous black samurai, Yasuke. Yasuke was from Mozambique. He was abducted and brought to Japan, where he became the most important aide of the most famous Japanese samurai. And Yasuke is not known, but he is a member of this diaspora too. So this is why I'm saying it's a miracle, and these diasporas can be bridges and answers to global challenges and an opportunity to, and I would add, they can have a role in hybrid cultures, you know, and when you see, I don't know, Beyonce celebrating the new Africa, the success of the film Black Panther, American film, but played with African actors, that's a lot on the, you know, when all these stories are very strong, very powerful, and they represent a hybrid culture we have in common and we share with everyone.
Thank you, Ambassador. So it really resonates with me when you say that African as survivor, and just to show how this global experience can give when we talk about issue, I would like to come back to the discussion that we had in the beginning of this webinar, when we were also talking about China, its role in Africa, and also the conflict between China, the US and Europe happening in Africa. So just for the audience, the way African countries look at China is very different from what we usually talk about here. So let's keep in mind that in Africa, the West are the country that colonizes us, that organize the slavery trade. So when you have a newcomer like China, people are actually pretty warm to the idea to trade with a country that also has to go through hardship and develop its economy just like we would like to do. So in one of your interviews, you mentioned that Africa is the new China. Can you say a few words about that point of view, and also how African country has to maneuver between a superpower trying to influence the future?
Oh, yes, that's a very good remark. From Washington, what I understand that, you know, when we want to trigger the interest of our interlocutors, we just say China, because China is a new global power on the international stage. And when it comes to Africa, it triggers a lot of reactions. And people don't understand why we have this new partnership between China and Africa. China is seen as a threat, a problem, a challenge, and you know, when I was Secretary of State for Human Rights, you know, I had to deal with the Olympic Games organized in Beijing at that time, like these days, you know, and it was tough for me. Even I could not travel in China because of this title, human rights, you know, on my face. So you can see how difficult it is to handle these questions with China. But when it comes to Africa, China is a new strategic partner for African nations. We know why China came to Africa, to find natural resources. China is a huge demographic country that needs to feed its population. That's the main reason why China is trading with Africa. But they not only they found natural resources for their population, but they found also clients, consumers, markets. And that's why it's so powerful. That's why these partnerships are shaking the international order. Africa is building the most important, the largest free trade area in the world since last January 2021. That's a lot. A middle class beyond $1 billion in 2060. Before the pandemic, Africa was the home of half of the world's most dynamic economies. That's huge too. It is a strategic continent for demographic reasons, but like I said, because behind these young people, you have future clients and consumers. But on this continent, you have the biggest digital revolution in the world in these last 2 decades. And of course, the hub of an alternative multilateralism. That's right. And China, and from time to time with Russia, we can see that in Sahel and other parts of the continent, they are in a bold move to try to build something different from the usual multilateralism we have. They promote their own World Bank, they promote their own IMF. So that's something is going on there. And the African nations, they say we have the right to diversify our partnerships in name of our sovereignty and our needs. And I understand that for some classic global powers or former colonial powers, it is threatening for their, what they are used to have before. But I think that they should take this as an opportunity, maybe to adjust their policies to Africa. I really think that, because we have to take into consideration the new generations, open to the world. They know everything about what we are doing. They have Netflix too, and Netflix is more and more African. So they want to have another narrative about their continent. They would like to change some rules, and they feel that they have the right to discuss with everyone. I think that instead of criticizing China, we should just adjust our own policies from Washington and from Paris, and because I'm not sure that people in Africa want the same political system than in China. So that's why I really think that we are in a historical turning point.
So follow-up question that has to do with what you mentioned many times, that Africa is the youngest continent. We have very soon we will have the continent with the most people, but at the same time, at this time, it's difficult to see a continent rise without strong education. So how do we actually educate, give an education to all these young people in Africa? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities when it comes to education? Maybe new tools, more digital tools to bring more education to Africa, but also the question of in which language the children of Africa has to learn. So I'm a mathematician, and it resonates with me that if you're an African child, before to even learn to solve second-order equation, often you have to learn a foreign language. So what is the challenge when it comes to education to rise, for Africa to rise?
What I think, because your question is critical, I think it's the main answer that could help to fix African problems, because Africa is facing, I stressed the strengths, the African strengths, of course, and its strategic identity and position in the new world. But in the meantime, Africa is facing so many challenges, you know, poverty, global warming, terrorism. It's a lot. The main answer to these three main challenges, in my opinion, should be education. First, I really think that to be able to handle this challenge of education, African nations should have the control on their education system, which means that it's like the military. You know, you cannot just ask foreigners to handle the education of your people, what they have in their mind. If you say that it should be handled by foreign countries, partners, multilateral partners, and they will fund this, they will decide what you people should think, and for 2-3 generations. So I think the African states should have the control. They can you know, they can handle or many files, sectors with partners, and it's even critical to do so. But for education, they should just be sovereign and control their education system. 2, that means that they should do it in their languages, I think. And it's not exclusive. Africans are very lucky. They speak so many languages. Before becoming adults, they can speak like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 languages very often, because in one country you can have 10 languages shared by all the people of this country. On the African continent, 2,000 languages exist. It's an incredible cultural diversity. But everybody's talking about Francophone countries, Anglophone countries, maybe Portuguese countries, and that's it. But 2,000 languages, it's more than 3 cultural areas. And here it's because African nations had lost the control on their own languages. But I cannot accept when we say, you know, we take some women in some African rural area, and we say in the international statistic and data, these women cannot speak or even understand the writing, the language. And that woman, she speaks 5, 6, 7 languages in her country. Yes. And this asset is not highlighted in international data, and that's a shame. And 3, on the policies and the means, it's important to raise the number of universities, of schools. It's very important, and even if we can say that more and more African children go to school now, even young girls, I think when it comes to the level of universities, you cannot find enough capacities, and that is a critical problem.
As I said earlier, so I am a member of the board of Malaika, which is a foundation that supports the education of young girls. So in Congo, and I think everywhere in the world, we said that educate a woman, educate a nation. So do you also see the opportunity here to focus on women education as a way to actually solve this problem? In many societies in Africa, people put their sons first as well. And so pushing in a society in which like all women have access to education, I think everybody else will also have a chance. In your role now as the director of the African Center in one of the top think tank in Washington, DC, will you also have this vision to basically try to bring a solution to improve women education?
Yes, this question is also very, very important, because you cannot solve problems in Africa if you don't start with women. Because women, particularly on the African continent, are the heart of the communities. You know, I even say that women, African women, they carry a leadership. And since always, you know, African women have an economic role that is incredibly powerful. They produce 80% of the food on the African continent. They represent 60%, 70% of the agriculture on the continent. These data come from the World Bank, you know. The World Bank even says that if if women controlled agriculture in Burkina Faso, for example, the production would raise to 20%. You know, that's a lot. And even if we talk about political scene, for example, more and more women are involved in Africa on the political scene. That's a lot. Look at Senegal or Rwanda, where they are more and more in very high level positions in the parliament, or even as prime minister, or in the head of states too. We know that about Liberia or Ethiopia. So there is a leadership, women leadership in the African continent, more than other developed countries. So that's why it's so important to insist on the importance of education, because imagine if we did better on the education sphere, it would be tremendous. Their impact in the societies are so important. That's why when there is a crisis or a war in some African continent, you know, the warriors, the soldiers, the rebels, they attack first women first, because they know that if women are vulnerable, the impact on the communities will be tremendous. And
Yeah.
and it is the contrary is also true. If you want to repair a community, if you want to solve a problem in Africa, you should do this through women, because the impact will be more powerful than if you don't do this with women's support.
So I'd like to, before to start taking questions from the audience, I actually like to add the following comment. What is the definition of an entrepreneur in Africa? When you go, let's say in my home city of Kinshasa, you go in the morning and you drive around Kinshasa, you see women 5 a.m. in the morning with carrying load on their head, going, selling bread. Now they have access to microcredit in Kenya. So the definition of who is an African entrepreneur is not necessarily what people see from this side of the ocean. Our women in Africa, they are our best entrepreneurs. They sustain families. They basically are raising a continent. So I'm going to start with a question from Elias. So he asked, what type of policies, incentive should we put in place to encourage the diaspora community to return home and to invest in their countries of origin? That's the $1 million question.
Yes, it's a usual question, but it's very important. Sometimes people who it's a question. Very often people ask this question to Africans. I don't know why. Maybe because Africa, they see the continent as a poor continent. So why are you in Washington and Paris? You should go there and help. You would be more helpful there than in our countries. Sometimes it's because the African continent needs assets strong assets, engineers, experts, skills. And it's a true need, economically speaking, and even academically speaking. My first answer is everybody, has the freedom to do what he or she wants. There's no mandatory, no duty to go there in Africa. If people think that they are more and they can be useful from Washington or from Paris, it's their liberty, it's their freedom to do so. And they can be. I'm sure, Jonathan, you are in Boston. Every day you are working for the African continent because you are building companies, startups, you are engaged in so many projects of, supporting young generations, you are teaching, you are, and just because you are supporting the continent. Because you are the proof that the continent can be great and can achieve so many great things. So that's a way to serve the continent. And sometimes when you go back, you are not successful because you have to start from the scratch. People don't know you who you are. You don't know the people. You are maybe not an African anymore because since so many years you are a Parisian, and people, they don't welcome you warmly when, because they have their own habits, their own knowledge, and maybe you are not in the right place. Yeah. And sometimes the states does not bring you help to adjust yourself to the new context.
Yes, I very much agree with that. So my point of view, we have many programs in which we encourage students to do, for example, PhD. So by the way, Africa is one of the continents where the percentage of women scientists is the highest. And so we're very proud of it. But then when we bring the question of asking people to come back to Africa, my point of view is you are in Africa if your heart is in Africa. There is so many things that you can do using advantages that exist sometimes in other countries, and also not putting yourself at risk, because that's definitely one of the problems. Some of the biggest change that we need in Africa are not necessarily popular with the local elites. And sometimes you have more protection to do it from abroad. But what is nice is we have a mixture of people who make different choices. As long as they know where their heart is, I trust that they will do the right thing. So now I'd like to talk about problem of security. So you as in your career are talking about human rights and also the fact that you understand the Sahel very well. Can you maybe try to break down to our audience what is actually the issue happening over there?
Sorry, I missed your last sentence.
What is the issue with Sahel? So we see a lot of troops moves, France is involved. Sometimes it's very difficult to just understand what is going on without knowing and following it day to day. So can you break it down for our audience?
Yes. Right now, as I'm speaking, as we are speaking, France is deciding to withdraw from Mali, and it's breaking news because France has been committed in Mali since more than 10 years now. I can understand for our audience, the Sahel is very far from the United States, but it's very important for the world because of the jihadist and the terrorist movements. Africa, and this part of Africa, is their new battleground. So what's happening there has consequences in Western city capitals. In Paris, we experienced very hard, bloody attacks a few years ago, And every day, the country is under pressure of these jihadists and terrorists, and the police is working hard to keep them very far from the city capitals. But these people, they travel. They are very flexible. And in the Sahel, after 10 years of war to try to contain these jihadist movements, France is going to announce its withdrawal from the heart of the Sahel, I mean Mali. And then yesterday we hosted an event about Russia's role in Mali, because a lot is happening. Not only you have the jihadists, very tough to contain them, because now they are reaching the Gulf of Guinea, African coastal states. And the Gulf of Guinea, it's the Atlantic. The Atlantic, it's the maritime border with the Americas, you know, so it's not so far. And they are, you know, they are in traffics, you know, beyond the Atlantic with South America, drugs, etc. So it's a lot. And now there is a private paramilitary groups, Wagner from Russia, bringing help to the Malian government since France decided to withdraw. People are asking why Russia, what's going on, a new global player on the African continent. And in the meantime, the governments in Mali and in all these Sahelian countries, Burkina Faso, are very weak. 3 coups happened in these last months because the previous governments were too weak to tackle the jihadist and the terrorist threats. And now you have military at the head of these states, and they don't want to speak anymore with France, European and Western partners. And they're prioritizing these Russian groups. So that's where we stand right now. People fear an Afghanistan scenario. That's why it's so important to, beyond the military options, to focus on the populations and the developments, how we can bring a future to young generations of Sahelian populations there.
So Rama, we have about 2-3 minutes left. I'd like you to end with a note of hope. So we were talking yesterday, and this generation of African, they have this opportunity to basically redefine what is the standing of this continent in the world after hundreds of years of abuse. And so we have people like you who are in position of power, in position to advise leaders which path to take. So what can you say is your commitment for the following few years as the head of the African Center? What type of vision you will bring to redefine the place of Africa in the world?
It's a very tough question. I'd say first, it's not an individual task or mission. It has to be a teamwork. Everybody here who is attending this meeting can bring support and help. As thinker, as doer, you know, because we are all linked to the African destiny. So if Africa gets well or better, everybody will get well or better. If things are getting worse in Africa, all of us will pay the consequences. So Africa is our future, our past, and we are all Africans since the first human being was born there. We are the common ancestors. So we all have a duty to go back to the continent, not only people who are born there. And how I am trying. So it's a collective and a teamwork first. And two, I'm focusing on those priorities because everything is priority, everything. And it's very important to focus on a few topics, to prioritize them. So I have chosen to focus on issues undermined by other players. For example, when we talk about business, everybody will talk about, I don't know, let's take another example, climate change. Everybody will say, okay, we have to get rid of fossil energy, including gas. The problem is, for gas, I mean, for Western countries, it's a problem, you know, because of gas emissions, of course. We know that. All the COPs have failed since the first one. We are at like 26, Glasgow, it was the 26th COP, because the gas emissions are higher and higher. We agree. But for Africans, the choice is not between fossil and renewable energy. The choice is between electricity or death. So you cannot just say you should do more efforts on this like the others. Africa is a victim of the global warming. It's not, for them, it's not a threat, it's a reality. Every day, floods, rural exodus, deforestation, you know, they are experiencing this every day in their life. So, but they need electricity. So we should adjust our policies here. So that's the way I'm working. I'm not just saying the same like the others. I'm trying to focus on the populations and their needs and to put these issues at the top of the diplomatic agenda. And I'm trying to dig deeper on new industries like creative industries, sports. All these topics should be used to promote innovative sectors that can bring job creation for young people. So that's the way I'm trying to do this.
Thank you so much. And so as you raised the issue of global warming and finding new solutions, so I also want to say to all the scientists and the African scientists, this is your century to make a difference, to find solution for our home using science. And let's see what we're going to do. But, you know, I'm positive, Northeastern community, take the challenge and change the face of this world. And I bring back Ravi to conclude. And thank you so much again, Ambassador Ravi.
Thank you, Professor. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ambassador, and thank you, Professor Isoli. That was a really interesting conversation. I learned so much from your observations and your perspectives. You raised so many important issues, I think, about the role of the diaspora, about the role of education, about the role of China, and about the role of women, all of which I think are very salient issues, and provides wonderful closure to our conversations this morning. We started out by looking at the macro issues, but more from a business perspective. And I think we rounded out the discussion by seeing really the much bigger sets of issues affecting the society, the continent, and the relationship between the US and Africa. At this point, I think we have a message, a video message from our trustee, Subodh Chandrai, that I think Carolyn will be playing now.
Good morning to you all, and thank you for joining us today at Northeastern's first annual Africa Business Conference. My name is Subodh Chandrai. It is my pleasure to be here with you to discuss the bright opportunities to be found in Africa's blossoming economy. This initiative, being the first of its kind, seeks to convince more bright African minds that Northeastern is the right place to complete their education. We're growing an ambitious scholarship program, promoting collaboration with academic partners in Africa, and working on joint projects with young African entrepreneurs, addressing the shared challenges that we all face in today's global economy. Finally, we are providing our students at DMSP with opportunities to partner with African businesses. I'm a trustee of Northeastern University, and I've worked and invested in West Africa for a quarter of a century as the chair of Far East Mercantile. a business with significant interests throughout Africa. In my personal and professional life, I have seen the value and impact that trusted partnerships can deliver. Today, I will talk to you about Africa as I know it. Africa's most valuable resource is truly the hardworking, welcoming, and warm people who call it home. People in Africa are proud to be African. This pride has helped to produce 27 Nobel Prize winners, countless great sportsmen, and a variety of life-changing innovations. Most people ask me why I chose Africa. Being the 5th generation of a family business, I had no choice. But today I'm happy to say that I have no regrets, and my children also look to Africa as their home. But many people ask, why is Africa so special? What makes Africa special is its wealth of untapped business opportunities. Here are some interesting facts. 67 million international tourists visited in 2018, making Africa the 2nd fastest growing tourism hub on the planet and generating $38 billion in revenue. Mobile phone subscribers surged 2,500% from the years 2000 to 2012. At least a quarter of the population has internet access, a nearly 50-fold increase since the turn of the millennium. Africa houses over 1.2 billion people, almost 17% of the world's population. Africa has the youngest population globally. Nigeria alone has 7 million babies each year, compared to 4.2 billion babies in all of Europe. Other developing markets have had their time in the limelight. Now it's Africa's time to shine. Now it's time to enter Africa, to seize the opportunities that already exist there and build new ones to sustain growth into the future. I'm often asked how one succeeds in Africa. In truth, there is no shortcut or easy win. You have to be invested for the medium to long term. You need to embrace its ups and downs and be resilient. Africa is not for the faint-hearted. Each African nation has its own unique dynamics. Copy and paste business models will not work throughout the whole continent. And those who are successful will be those who spend time learning from the local environment. Together, we in the DMSB community and the African Global Initiative believe that Northeastern will gain strength and relevance from engaging with Africa. Our wish is to build a mutually empowering relationship with our African counterparts and succeed with them in the 21st century. I want to commend Northeastern University for its foresight in arranging this prestigious event and attracting such a great group of speakers. Ambassador Rama Yade, Director of the Atlantic Council Africa Center, Florie Liser, the 3rd President and CEO of the Corporate Council on Africa, and Dilip Pal, Safaricom's CFO. I would also like to thank Dean Saiv, as well as the nearly 50 students, faculty, past students, and members of our community who have come together over the past year to build a brighter future for Africa. Thank you very much for attending.